एक हीरा था जो हमसे जुदा हो गया। उसने एक नज़म लिखी थी और इसने शुरू ही इस तरह किया था कि मैं खलीफा वक्त से सबसे ज़्यादा प्यार करता हूँ, और ख़त्म इस तरह किया था कि खलीफा वक्त से जो मुझे प्यार है और मोहब्बत है वो उन्हें कभी पता नहीं चलेगी, लेकिन ऐ प्यारे तारे, मैं तुम्हें बताता हूँ कि तुम्हारे इन आखिरी अल्फाज से पहले भी मुझे पता था कि तुम्हें खिलाफत से प्यार और मोहब्बत का ताल्लुक़ था। तुम्हारे हर अमल से, हर हरकत व सुकून से, जब तुम्हारे हाथ में कैमरा होता था और मैं सामने होता था तब भी, और जब तुम कैमरे के अलावा मिलते थे, तुम्हारी आँखों की चमक से इस मोहब्बत का इजहार होता था। तुम्हारे चेहरे की एक अजीब किस्म की रौनक से इस मोहब्बत का इजहार होता था। गर्ज़ कि हर तरह तुम्हारे हर अमल से ये लग रहा होता था कि किस तरह तुम इस मोहब्बत का इजहार करो जो तुम्हें खलीफा वक्त से है।
हाटली फूल का वो फूल, वो महबूब गया।
On the 24th of August 2021, the 14th day of the holy month of Muharram 1443 after Hijrah, a most devoted servant of Islam Ahmadiyyat, a true follower of Khilafat and an exemplary Waqf Zindagi, Sayyid Taleh Ahmed was elevated to the status of a shaheed, a martyr in the way of Allah.
Sayyid Taleh Ahmed was ambushed while filming for a Muslim TV channel.
He was in Ghana to report on charity work carried out by the Muslim community for the TV channel MTA, and it seems he was focused on his job to the very end.
To know his life and pious actions is not only a source of inspiration, but how we keep the blessed memory of those who made the ultimate sacrifice for their Lord's sake alive.
उसके अखलाक निराले थे, अदाएं थी अजीब।
We were married in Hartlepool, and Hazrat Khalifa Masih Rabi Rahimahullah Ta'ala came to do the nikah, so our nikah was done on the night. And I said to him, Hazur, pray for our children from this marriage. Pray for our children to be born out of this wedlock. And that brought, a beaming smile to Hazur's face. He was so pleased with that. His eyes filled, his face was smiling, but all he could manage was a nod, saying to me like this, yes, I will. And Taleh was not even conceived then, but the prayer started from him, I think from that moment.
Sayyid Taleh Ahmed was born to Sayyid Hashim Ahmed Sahib and Taiba Ahmed Sahiba on the 9th of February 1990.
Ya Rab hai tera ihsan.
And we had requested Hazur, Khalifa Masih Rabi, if he could be in the Waqf scheme, and Hazur had graciously accepted him. Hazur gave him his name Taleh, which means very fortunate, or one who rises like the sun. And he was always very, very fortunate.
This most fortunate child was the progeny of blessed and holy ancestors. From his father's side, his grandmother was the daughter of Hazrat Mirza Bashir Ahmed Raziyallahu Anhu, one of the blessed sons of the promised Messiah alayhi salam. From his mother's side, he was the grandchild of Hamid Khan Sahib and Sajida Hamid Sahiba. However, his paternal great-grandfather, Hazrat Mir Muhammad Ismail Raziyallahu Anhu, had a most blessed lineage.
We have an authentic family tree from our grandfather's side, right to Hazrat Ali Raziyallahu Ta'ala Anhu and Hazrat Imam Hassan Raziyallahu Ta'ala Anhu and then Hazrat Ali Raziyallahu Ta'ala Anhu. So the combination of all these lineage, Allah Ta'ala produced Sayyid Ali Ahmad. Out of all my children, he realized the importance of being born in a family who has lineage of prophethoods. That once you're born in this family, the life is not yours. It is to be lived for God. You have to live it the way He wants you to, and you have to die with the way He wants you to. And I'm so proud to say that every minute of his life was like that, realizing the responsibility that he is born in the family of Promised Messiah alayhi salam, and going beyond that, he is born in the family of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam.
When my father passed away, my mother had passed away before. After a few months, Tale's family moved into the house, and basically to look after me. I was still I was still a child myself at the time. And so then at that time I saw Tale, and so then that relationship being an uncle at that time actually became more like a younger brother, because we were living together. And you know how younger brothers, they have times when they are the best of friends. Sometimes you have arguments.
Tale was the most fun son. Loving, warm, confident, charming, such good company, such a great sense of humour, always kind, always cheerful, very forgiving.
Once Hazrat Khalifa al-Masih IV, he came to Hartlepool, and Tale was only 3 or 4 years old and they were running around. So once Hazur was joking with my mum, and she said, out of the 4 kids, who do you think's the most intelligent? And my mum said, Abid, that you know. And Hazur said, no, it's Gugu. Gugu is Tale's mum. But he said, this little one, and he pointed to Tale. He said, he's going to be more clever than all of them put together.
In 5 years old, he came to England and started school over here. And at that time, the teacher sent me, you know, that this is what he has written, which was incredible, I thought, for a 5-year-old, and I've still kept it. He said there was a plant and it was dying. And then there came a worm to live underneath the plant and gave it life, and the plant started living. When worms actually bring life to the plant by burrowing through and making the air and nourishment go to the roots of the plant. So the 5-year-old had the understanding of that.
Abid Khan Saab, who is our Mamu, was head boy at school. And Tale, I think, wanted to be head boy as well because he was.
And at that point he had to do a speech, an election speech. And for that speech, he dressed in a shalwar kameez, and then he wrote a witty poem which he recited.
So the fact that he won this competition just showed his character and what people thought of him. And he never, you know, he never felt inferior. The fact that he went in a shalwar kameez to say, I'm Pakistani and I'm proud of it.
He really enjoyed studying religion and his faith, so if there was ever anything that I was confused about or I was trying to know more about, I knew that the person I could ask was Tale Bhai.
My sister, so she wanted him to, even though she was Waqf, she wanted him to do medicine first and then do Waqf. But his heart was never really into it, so he didn't really enjoy it very much. He was extremely intelligent, but it wasn't his passion. He was just doing it because his mum told him to do it. So he didn't pursue that, and they asked Hazur advice. Hazur said, do By the time he finished this, he did a biomed sci degree with the intention to do medicine, but he didn't really find his heart in that, so he didn't want to do the whole medicine.
Hazur Ayatollah bin Nasr Aziz realized this problem, and he took him under his wings. So I still remember that he said, okay, you live in 39 over here. And he said, to start with, what you do is, meaning by his work started from the same time, that this is 5-volume commentary and you start reading it. Hazur realized what is his abilities. So he said, okay, you do masters in journalism. From that point onward, Taleh was not the Taleh we knew from when Hazur took him over. He was, with us, he was like a diamond with coverings all over it and looked just like a stone, where Hazur polished him and made him into a diamond.
वो शख्स नहीं, वो मेरा दिल है.
When we heard the news of Taleh's passing, Abid, my brother, passed on some messages that Hazur, some comments, some lovely things that Hazur had very kindly said. And in that, Hazur had said he was a hira, which meaning a diamond. And immediately I could feel in my heart gratitude to Allah, and I could feel that, you know, Khilafat is such a blessing and so divinely inspired, because many years before, when I was considering my husband's rishta, so even before I was married, and I was doing my istikhara prayer, I had had a dream whereby I had gone through a very icy road and ended up in a wooden sort of cabin area where there was a very holy gentleman wearing one of our flat topis that MDs wear. And I knew about this gentleman that he was extremely trustworthy, and I trusted him beyond anything. And he took out in front of me many jewels, and I just gained the impression that he was the richest man in the world in the dream. And upon this, my husband, future husband at the time, came into the room and took out a rock-sized diamond and placed that in front of us, as if to say he was also one of the richest people in the world. Obviously, I took the riches to mean spiritual riches and blessings, alhamdulillah. And when Hazur mentioned upon Taleh's passing that he was a diamond, I felt a connection that this was the fulfillment of that dream.
अपनी उम्र के लिहाज से एक गैर मामूली बच्चा था, उसका अल्लाह ताला से ताल्लुक़ बड़ा मज़बूत ताल्लुक़, और वो मुझे वाक़यात बताता था, कह देता था किसी को बताएं ना आगे, जो अल्लाह ताला से ताल्लुक़ है ना उसका, किस तरह खुदा ताला मुझाना उसकी दुआएं सुनी और किस तरह मुझाना काम बनाए। दूसरे उसका खिलाफत से ताल्लुक़, मतलब हुज़ूर ने जो कह दिया बस वो आखिरी है बात, उस बाद खुद अपना कुछ नहीं।
In 2013, Taleh, who was a Waqf now, was appointed as a Waqf Zindagi by Hazrat Khalifatul Masih, and he was appointed under my supervision in the Press and Media Office. And Taleh worked there for 2-3 years in the Press and Media Office.
So he was spending half his time in MTA News and half his time in Press Office. And on top of that, throughout the years, and he started becoming involved in Majlis Khudam al-Ahmadiyya as well. And he was also serving for a long period of time as the National Sehat Jismani Secretary for Atfal al-Ahmadiyya. And then he also went on to serve as the editor of Tahir magazine. And then he did some other various roles in Majlis Khudam al-Ahmadiyya Ishaat as well. So he was a very good all-rounder. Any spare time he had, really, he spent it figuring out a way where he could serve the Jamaat in new ways.
Talibai was really obedient and had immense love for Khilafat, and that showed through his conduct, and whatever he said was in direct guidance of Hazrat Khalifatul Masih, may Allah be his helper. I remember clearly that a few months ago when Hazrat Khalifatul Masih was carrying out virtual mulaqats, and in a few of those mulaqats Hazrat mentioned that every murabbi should try to offer at least 1 hour of tahajjud. But Talibai took this guidance upon himself and he wanted to carry out as if he was given this direct guidance.
ताले का वजूद ऐसा था, वो इस मोहब्बत का इजहार नहीं करना चाहता था, बल्कि छुपाना चाहता था, लेकिन नहीं छुपता था। अल्लाह ताला किसी न किसी रंग में उसका इजहार करवा देता था, इसलिए वो मुझे बहुत प्यारा था। हर वक्त इस फिक्र में रहता था कि कब खलीफा वक्त के मुंह से कोई बात निकले और मैं इस पर अमल करूं।
When we watch a football match, we often see the commentators say, or the players themselves say, that they would run through a brick wall for a manager. And of course, the work of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community is far more important than a mere football match. But I've often seen that the way Hazur addresses his workers and cares for his workers, he gives guidance with such wisdom that you become so motivated, you feel like you could actually run through a wall to fulfill the instructions of Hazrat Khalifatul Masih.
With just 3 days to go till Hazrat Khalifatul Masih addresses 35,000 Ahmadi Muslims at the opening session of Jalsa Salana, Germany, preparations are already fast underway behind me.
It was decided that Taleh would work in MTA News full-time. And it was around that time, or just a little bit before that, I'd been given the duty and responsibility of being the director of MTA News, in charge of that department.
Taleh was of that young generation who brought some excitement and a breath of fresh air to that team, and really, you know, changed the way in which the news was presented on MTA for the better, by far for the better, and clearly under the guidance of Hazur.
You know, he didn't go to Jamia. His first love was, you know, the work he did for the Jamaat, and that was always his sort of end goal, to sort of serve the Jamaat, which he ultimately did very successfully.
When he was Sayyid Jismani Secretary, he brought that into MTA News as well. He made sure that, you know, if there's an opportunity to cover MTA News stuff whilst doing his Khudam al-Ahmadiyya stuff, he did that, and he did it so well as well that he covered Atfal Football League as part of MTA News, and he used to make stories about it regularly when the football leagues were running. And of course he did the Ahmadiyya Muslim Youth Football Club, a documentary as well, for Love in the Game.
This project, undertaken without any technical or operational knowledge of cameras at that time by Sayyid Taleh Ahmed, would be the start of a series of ever-increasing documentary projects that would go about diversifying the content produced by the MTA News team. Sayyid Taleh Ahmed then turned his attention towards his hometown and the foundations of the Jamaat that were laid there by his maternal grandparents, the town of Hartlepool.
I was reluctant. I said that this is our hometown where we grew up. If we do a documentary about this, I don't want anyone to think that we're using MTA's facilities or using our position within MTA to promote something related to that is directly intrinsically related to us. So I think that this is something that is better for us to leave. And Taleh said to me, he said that I'm not doing it because of you or because of me. I'm doing it because your parents, as in my parents, my grandparents, they did a lot of service. And there's a lot of Ahmadis in Hartlepool, English Ahmadis, and it should be recorded once in history. So when he said that, he got me. And so then I said, okay, your point is valid. And so I went to Hazur and I said that this is what Taleh wants to do. Hazur said, of course. Ye to unka haq hai. That this is their right, that MTA records their history.
How do our youngsters, how do we know, and even our kids and our grandkids, how do they know the history of Ahmadiyya unless somebody makes the effort to document it? In the old days, people used to write biographies. But the kids these days haven't got the patience to read biographies, like my kids haven't got patience for that. But they're quite happy to watch a 20-minute YouTube video where then it documents everything.
مسرور يا بحر الهدى أرض التقى والنور جئناك نبغي بيعة نمضي بها للنور.
It seems that these two projects, as great as they were just a warm-up for Sayyid Talay Ahmed to pursue the very center of his calling, his unmatched love, drive and passion for the representative of the promised Messiah, والسلام, Hazrat Khalifatul Masih, Ayyadahullahu Ta'ala bin Nasir al-Aziz.
Then he told me after that he wanted to do something about the election of Hazrat Khalifatul Masih Khamis. He started preparing a documentary, and when he showed it to me, there was one or two minor things, but I remember seeing it and thinking that it's truly beautiful. It's something that is really, really, I think, it's touched my heart so much. But the only, I think, small issue was over the title. And so I took the DVD to Hazur, and Hazur was watching the video. And at one point, Talay's father, he said something about his own experiences. He was in the documentary about how it felt that we were without a shepherd. And Hazur was doing his work, and suddenly Hazur looked up. He said, "Yeah," and I was a bit confused. And then Hazur said, "Shepherd ka lafz," the word shepherd, and still I didn't follow. And Hazur said, "Ke 4 days without a shepherd." And then I said, "But Talay, we've got a title." And he was like, "What is it?" And I said that 4 days without a shepherd. Hazur's heard your father's interview, and then this. And Talay on the phone, he just became so overwhelmed and emotional. And this interview here is in Masjid Fazl. I remember I was just sat in my car just a few meters away. At the time, Hazur lived here in Masjid Fazl. And Talay was completely overwhelmed, and he was just saying, "I can't believe that I have this honor, that Khalifa Waqt has chosen the name for my documentary."
Hazrat Khalifatul Masih Rabe रहमतुल्लाह ताला की तदफीन के वक्त मेरे दाएं तरफ आकर खड़ा हो गया. मैं नहीं जानता था कौन खड़ा है. अब तस्वीर देखी तो फिर मुझे अंदाज़ा हुआ कि कौन था और क्या मौका था. लेकिन इस 13 साला बच्चे ने शायद उस वक्त ये ऐद किया था कि मैं वक्फ़े नौ हूँ और अब मैंने खलीफा वक्त का मददगार बनना है, दस्ते रास्त बनना है. और फिर उसने सालों बाद अपनी तालीम मुकम्मल करके इस ऐद को पूरा किया और निभाया और खूब निभाया.
One of Talay's lasting legacies is that the standard of documentaries in MTA has definitely gone up, not just through the news department, but the production of producing documentaries in the last 2, 3, 4 years, which are a much higher standard to previous. And I think Talay's efforts have played a role in that.
Every program that he made, no matter what topic it was, whether it was the news items and the other documentaries that he made, his love for Khilafat and bringing people closer to Khilafat was a center theme. And I think in that regard, our next generations, our children owe a lot to him, because he played a vital role in that with his programs and documentaries.
Obviously, he made several excellent documentaries which touched the hearts of millions of Ahmadis around the world. But for me, I think his main legacy which he left was This Week with Hazur.
खलीफा के हम हैं खलीफा हमारा वो दिल है हमारा.
About 2-3 years ago, Talay came to me and he said that whenever Hazur has an event or a public event or a program, we publish a short report on that day. But he said it doesn't get the exposure that it should. So we had a news slot every day, 15 minutes. So I said to him that, okay, this week just prepare something. Instead of putting any news, like world news or anything, we'll just put something regarding Hazur's activities that week. So I'll give you the full slot. And so he prepared something and he sent it to me on WhatsApp or YouTube or whatever, and I checked it, and it was a very nice piece about some of Hazur's meetings that week. And so I said, go ahead, put it out there. And then just before it was a couple of hours before he said to me, he said, what do we call it? We can't just call it World News. And I didn't have time to seek Huzoor's guidance on this because the broadcast was in an hour. I didn't have mulaqat, or already had mulaqat that day. And so I was just racking my brains, and I said to him, for this week, just call it This Week with Huzoor. I said, it's a simple, basic thing. Just call it that.
Assalamu alaikum and welcome to MTA News. Each week we bring you a brief glimpse into Huzoor's activities.
And mashallah, we got so much feedback on that first episode. I got calls after calls that we love this program. The viewership was very good. Throughout that early period, we used to produce everything. But I think this program really has come into its own during the pandemic, because people were desperate, especially in the early parts, to see Huzoor, to hear from him.
One benefit is that, which I get from this virtual mulaqat, is that I can see your faces. I can see how strong and staunch the people of the community are in their faith. And I can see the love for the Khilafat on their faces, as I can see on your face. So this is the benefit which I am also getting.
أياماً حبهم روح لذاتي ولذات وصل.
अगर 10 साल काम किया है तो 10 साल में से शायद उसने एक लम्हा भी ज़ाया नहीं किया अपने काम से. अगर वो मसलन हम लोग आपस में बैठे बातें भी करें तो उसमें से भी वो अपने काम से जो उसके जहन में प्रोजेक्ट होते थे ना, उसकी बातें शुरू कर देता था, उसमें से भी वो निकाल लेता था.
Talibai not only was my colleague, but he was also my teacher, a friend, rather a brother, throughout these last 3 years.
Obviously, I've been struggling with his passing, as everyone has. One thing I've realized is that anyone I speak to, they tell me the same stories. The reoccurring theme that they keep saying is that he was like a brother to me, he was like an older brother to me, he was like a younger brother to me. And what I've realized is that to all of those people, he was a brother, just like I'm his brother. The only difference is we have the same blood.
बहुत हंसमुख, खुश मिजाज, कुछ कह भी दो तो वो बस हंसी में टाल देता था, उड़ा देता था बात को. हर वक्त मैंने इस बच्चे को हंसते मुस्कुराते, जितनी देर हम लोग आ रहे हैं आपस में, मेरे साथ रहा है उनका, हमेशा हंसता मुस्कुराता. और अभी गाना जाने के बाद रोज़ मुझे एक वीडियो भेज रहा था, एक अपनी तस्वीरें भेज रहा था. वो हुजूर के जो पुराने स्कूल के दरख्त का अमरूद तोड़ है, वो मेरी आखिरी तस्वीर थी जो उसकी मैंने वफ़ात के बाद, शहादत के बाद खोल ली है, तो मुझे पता चला है कि ये इसकी आखिरी तस्वीर है.
Once I remember me and Tale had an argument about a point, and obviously I was clearly wrong in that. I sent Tale a link which showed him that his point was correct, and he was like, why are you sending me this? You sending me this is like an atheist giving a Muslim the Holy Quran. So he had his sense of humor as well, and his own way of thinking, which was I really enjoyed that, and it stuck with me.
तेरे बंदे ऐ खुदा दुनिया में कुछ ऐसे भी हैं.
By the grace of Allah, Sayyid Tale Ahmed embodied the spirit of a true Waqf Zindagi, as witnessed by so many of his close friends and family. This included a sense of humility, selflessness, and complete lack of ego, an unquenched thirst for knowledge, and none more than his attention to the rights of his neighbors.
When I almost died, by the grace of Allah, the prayers of Hazrat Khalifat al-Masih Hayadullah and the believers, Allah saved me. He said the way how we took care of him, he took care of us. He said we became one family. He made a pledge, if something happens to Ibrahim, oh Allah, I will take care of his children and his wife till my death. And he said this is a solid promise of Allah.
One really unique quality of Talibai was that I have never come across any individual with such quality or such determination to carry this task out, was that He was the only person I knew that had listened to the entire Darsul Quran classes of Khalifatul Masih Rabi' rahimahullah. So he frequently used to walk to work from Fazl Mosque. Before that he was living near Fazl Mosque. And he used to walk to work, put his headset on, he used to download those classes on his phone, and he used to just listen to them on the way to work, to Baitul Futuh, and then same thing on the way back. This way he would listen to at least 2-3 episodes on his way here and on the way back. It's a long journey. It would take roughly about an hour. Sometimes he would come to me, and when often we were sitting in the office, he would discuss certain points that Khalifa Rabi' rahimahullah would mention, and that way I got to learn some things from those classes as well.
We were on holiday in Pakistan, and the whole trip, just doing work the whole time. He was taking interviews of people. We went on a tour of the city of Lahore, and he had his camera the whole time, and he was trying to get the most scenic shots. And he said to me that last time I came, you know, it was his holiday from work, so he didn't take any work, which is what most people would do. But he said he realised that he enjoys his time the most when he's doing work. So he said, this time, I've made sure that I'm doing work the whole time. And he loved that trip, mashallah. And it was a big part of it was because he got to do work for MTA the whole time that he was there.
That he had this hard drive, which he had bought with his own money. And he had all his projects that he was working on and all his footage and etc. He had that on his hard drive. And I think he said this to me, and he must have also said it to my colleague Nosharwan, that all my work is on this hard drive, and if anything happens to me, you guys know that it's on here, and you guys know what to do to kind of continue my work. So at the time, he said it in a joking way, but I thought it was maybe a bit of a strange comment, but this incident shows his selflessness as well, because he wasn't really concerned about himself, he was concerned more about the work.
He would come to me for little bits of technical advice. I helped him to digitize some videotapes and a few other bits and pieces, and he was always so humble about it. It wasn't a big thing for me to do, but he would put my name in the credits at the end of the documentary, and then he would tell me, you need to check your name is there on the credits, and it was a testament to the fact that he never saw any of the work that he did as being just his work or his dedication, even though it was 99% of the effort he'd put in himself. He always said, it's Huzur's direction, the blessings of Khilafat, and other people have helped me. And it was just an incredible testament to him as a person that he did it with such humility.
Ghulam Qadir Shaheed was my first cousin and my best friend. We grew up together from age 3 and 4 years ago. I saw a dream after he passed away, and I saw him in a dream, and I knew that I was meeting him. So I put my hand on his hand and I asked him, can I do anything for you? And he said to get married one of my child to his child. So that became like a spiritually ordained duty for me from that point onward as well. So I still remember him, that I called him and his mother also sitting over there, and he was having a pizza. And I started this conversation with him that this is my desire and this is I would like to do if you are willing. And I still remember that he had pizza in his hand. It never went into his mouth, just stood there. And he immediately after that, he said, yes, I'll do. Yes, please send my rishta. And as it was, lucky enough, the girl said yes to a 17-year-old, and they got married when they were 21. I can share with you what I mentioned it to him, and I said that you are marrying a daughter of a martyr. So she is an orphan, but don't expect that she is an orphan. I'll be a father to her first, and I will be a father to you later. So you have to look at it from that side and treat her like that. And his wife told me that, you know, he used to, he was a very humorous person, make humor of everything. And he used to say that, you know, I said yes to my father because he promised that he'll give me a pizza for next 1 week.
बेटी की वजह से मेरा अलहदा दुख है, मगर मुझे ताले की वजह से तकलीफ़ है। वो इतना प्यारा बच्चा था। मैं अपने बच्चों को यही कही थी कि मुझे लगता है कि मेरा बच्चा चला गया है मेरा, और मेरा दोस्त चला गया है।
Tale took it really seriously and considered it a great honor that he was marrying the daughter of somebody who had been martyred for the sake of Ahmadiyyat. And he had a sincere desire to be a good husband. And I know that he tried very, very hard to make her happy. He was a happy-natured person himself and cheerful.
Nobody make me laugh, right? I don't want to have to edit it, right? Okay.
मुस्कुराता था हमेशा वो नजीब इब्ने नजीब.
Hazur instructed that the news department should continue to make some documentaries. And Hazur himself said that one documentary that you should do is about the Nusrat Jahan scheme, about how the services of the Jamaat in Africa. And so Tale was very excited and happy about this project. He said, I had a mulaqat with Hazur, and Hazur said to me at that time, and this must be 7-8 years ago at least, that मैं तुम्हें भी भेज दूँ Africa, that should I send you to Africa as well? And Tale said that out of embarrassment or just shyness, I just kept quiet. But he said that in my heart, I was just desperate to say to Hazur, please, please send me to Africa for some work. And he said that ever since that day, he said, I knew Hazur will never break his promise or even that indication. So I just kept waiting for that day. And he said, today you've told me that Hazur is sending me to Africa. So he was really full of excitement, full of happiness.
He requested prayers and said, I'm going for 5 weeks. He told me he was going to Gambia, Sierra Leone and Ghana. And he was extremely excited about it.
When he was getting ready to go to Africa, he was so excited. And he phoned me and he messaged me to ask for advice. I'd been out to Gambia about a year or so before, and he was, I wouldn't say nervous, but he wanted to make sure that nothing would stand in the way of him being able to do the work that he needed to do. And that again was a testament to his dedication. You know, it would have been, he would have been very upset if, because of some oversight, he'd not been able to do his MTA work. You know, he'd got ill, he'd got an infection or whatever it was, if something stood in the way of doing that.
MashaAllah, by all reports, his own reports, I could tell, but even from the other people in Africa, he was working with pure devotion and dedication in the last few days.
He sent me some video and some photographs, and I couldn't believe how beautiful and how serene he looked. And my last text to him was, MashaAllah, you look so happy.
My family will be happy. This is Africa!
It was on the evening of the 23rd of August when Sayyid Tale Ahmed and 2 of his colleagues from MTA Studios in Ghana were travelling from the northern town of Tamale when their vehicle was fired upon by armed robbers. Sayyid Tale Ahmed and his colleague Umar Farooq were hit, and Abid Khan Sahib received the shocking news from the head of MTA Africa, Umar Safir Sahib.
And I remember I was just sat on the sofa in my lounge, and I just jumped out of my chair, and that feeling of pain, shock, it's just indescribable. But he said to me, he said, don't worry, though the reports are that he's okay. They were saying that they're in a small hospital and they need to take Taleh to a bigger hospital. And just the fact that they needed to take him to that bigger hospital was a cause of concern for me, that it means that something's not quite right. Otherwise they could treat him where he is. But I was just praying, and I informed Taleh's father as well. As soon as I found out, of course, I informed Hazrat Khalifatul Masih. It was late at night, and until about midnight, 12:30, Hazur was inquiring about Taleh. And I told him as much as I knew.
كالشمس كانت والقمر.
Then about 2:30 in the morning, I received a call from a missionary in Ghana, and he was weeping and he was crying, and he just said, Inna lillahi wa inna ilaihi raji'un. And he said, we couldn't save Taleh. It was a feeling of complete shock and devastation. And just 1,000 things within a moment go flashing through your mind. How was he feeling in those moments? All these things running through your mind. At the same time, you also have this immediate sense of reassurance that he was there on Jamaat duty. He was serving the Jamaat. And in our Jamaat, no matter what happens, we always have the prayers of Khalifa Waqt.
فترى كتاب الله مفهوم الروائع والدرر.
Hazur wrote and responded with such prayers for Taleh, for his family, for his wife, for his children, that even in those moments of grief, which were horrific, and I know that if we didn't have the prayers and guidance of Khalifa Waqt, I don't think I would have survived that night, never mind his close family and friends, the pain and the difficulties that we felt at that time. But through the prayers and the guidance of Hazur, the love of Hazur, all of his family, his wife, his parents, his brothers, his sisters, the members of the Jamaat, the staff of MTA, everyone's greatly grief-stricken, of course, but so much strength, pride as well. That is one of the overriding emotions I felt the last few days as well. Everyone, and you get to know so many things about Taleh, so many things that you never heard. And so of course it's a time of sadness, but also it's a time of certainly pride that Taleh wanted to serve the Jamaat. He was a Waqf Zindagi in spirit and in the way he fulfilled his duties to the very last with bravery and with courage.
उसके ही गम से तो आज आँखें हुई हैं पुरआब.
He was also son-in-law of a Shaheed. His father-in-law was the first martyr in the family of Promised Messiah alayhi salam, and he is the second one. So his wife holds this station now, that she is the daughter of a Shaheed, and she is a wife of a Shaheed as well. Alhamdulillah.
Taleh was a very loving husband and a true friend to me. A few months ago, I had some errands to run, and as I was walking towards the mall, I was overcome by sudden grief and sadness, and I started to cry. After some time, I composed myself and continued to do the little jobs that I wanted to do. When I came home, I opened the door to our bedroom, and Taleh looked at me and said, "Have you been crying?" And I said, "Yes." I thought maybe from my face he's able to tell that I was upset. But then he said, "About 20-25 minutes ago, I heard you cry, and so I got out of bed and
looked around the whole house, but you were not there. I wanted to console you. You were not there. I think Allah Mia always told him, whenever I needed him, that Talib loved his children. And it's just my request to the whole Jamaat to always remember his children in your prayers.
एक मुझे हज़रत मियाँ बशीर अहमद साहब के मुतालिक डॉक्यूमेंट्री बना रहा था। इसका मुझे फ़ोन है, इसने मुझे एक ख्वाब सुनाई कि मुनीर औधे साहब इसको घसीट के ज़बरदस्ती लेके जा रहे हैं और हज़रत, क्योंकि उन्होंने हज़रत मियाँ बशीर अहमद साहब के पास लेके जाना है कि उन्होंने इसी गर्दन पे छुरी फेरनी है। और ताले को मैंने कहा देखो, मुनीर का मतलब होता है रोशनी, मुनीर का मतलब तो ये तुम्हारे लिए उनका नाम बहुत अच्छा है, लेकिन बहरहाल सदका देने वाली ख्वाब है। आप देखें, ये तो सही निकली ख्वाब।
Yesterday, my husband was able to speak with the gentleman that was with Talib when he was passing away. And his last words was a message to his family, which was, I love my family and I love Huzur.
उसने खिलाफत से वफा की और ऐसी वफा की कि अपनी आखिरी अल्फाज में, जबकि वो मौत हयात की हालत में था, उसे खलीफा वक्त से प्यार और वफा का ही ख्याल था।
His last texts to me, all of it sort of just pointed towards the obedience to Khilafat. So I thought, mashallah, that the fact that my last messages from him, he could have replied to my messages, the last messages from him were even then guiding me towards obeying Khilafat, and I think that just really embodies his own love for Khilafat.
Alhamdulillah, the day that Talib passed away, it was so kind and so gracious of Huzur that he came to see us all, and very kindly and in such a loving way discussed the incident, and then listened to some of the things that we wish to say about our beloved son, and obviously the other relatives too. And it was a source of great comfort. And I know, as I've learned in the last few days, I didn't know before just how much Talib loved Huzur. I knew he loved Huzur, but I didn't know he loved him the way that he did.
Allah Ta'ala made him for what he's done. And he lived his life like a shaheed. And he died like one. And he knew that as well.
But when he was dying, he said, whether I live or die, my mission is accomplished. He took his work extremely seriously.
Many times, or several times I should say, Huzur has told me that the Jamaat is not contingent upon any single person. This is a divine Jamaat. So, mashallah, Ta'ala did his duty. Now it's up to the rest of us to fulfill our duties.
दिलों में प्यार की खुशबू तो होठों पर दुआ रखना, इमाम वक्त से एक रिश्ता इश्क वफा रखना.
I think one of the things that we see when we look at Huzur's character is how, as Hazrat Khalifatul Masih is the fifth successor of the promised Messiah alayhi salam, he's a perfect representation of the promised Messiah alayhi salam. He's a perfect representative for this era. He is Khalifa al-Waqt. So when we see Huzur in this role where he so courageously, like a lion of God, defends Islam, then we think that Huzur shouldn't be by himself. We should join him, we should stand up to help him. And how can we do that? So Huzur said that although there is a promise of the victory of Islam and Ahmadiyyat, whether it happens sooner or later depends on how hard we're willing to work. So now it's up to you on how hard you work.
Talib used to write letters to Huzur on a regular basis. So he would regularly send me letters on a weekly basis, or every so often he used to send me letters, and then whenever I could, I would forward those. So one of the letters that he had written before going to Africa, and he had written in that letter that Huzur, that I am unworthy of this task that I am going to go forward with, and I have shortcomings and weaknesses, so pray that Allah remove those weaknesses and makes me a good representative of MTA, Jamaat, and the Promised Messiah and the family of the Promised Messiah Islam. I felt as if his prayers are accepted and he has received the best reward that he could have received.
He was, of course, my nephew and somebody I loved very, very much. But because of that relationship, I was always very, very feeling that I don't want any of my other staff or anyone else to think that I give him preferential treatment. And because of that, I think from my side I went the other way. And I was more harsh with him and more stricter with him than I was with any of the other people who work with me. And that is something that I feel that I must have done some injustices. And I just pray that God forgives those injustices. And I hope that he knew that was the reason, because I knew his potential.
Hazrat sallallahu alaihi wasallam और हज़रत मसीह मौद अलैहिस्सलाम की जिस्मानी और रूहानी आल होने का हक़ भी था उसने अदा कर दिया और उसको भी अल्लाह ताला ने ऐसा लिया कि आसलम की आल में से था तो मुहर्रम के महीने में उसको भी कुर्बानी के लिए चुना। एक हीरा वाक़ई ज़िंदगी का था, जैसा मैंने कहा। अल्लाह ताला उसके दर्जात बुलंद से बुलंदतर करता चला जाए। उम्मीद है कि अल्लाह ताला ने उसे हज़रत सल्लल्लाहु अलैहि वसल्लम के कदमों में जगह दी होगी, बल्कि किसी ने उसकी वफ़ात के बाद ख्वाब भी देखी।
The next morning somebody sent us a message after he had passed away, and he said that I was obviously feeling sorrow and sadness to hear of Tale's passing. But at night I dreamt that Tale was walking, smiling in paradise. And there was a group of people at the head of which stood the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And when Tale recognized and realized that it was the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he started running towards him. And then he ran and he embraced him. And Hazur laughed, the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam laughed gently and embraced him back and said, "Welcome, my dear son."
तो वो मैंने कहा सतवर तुम्हें तो बेटे सतवर ने जब मुझे बताया कि मैंने दुआ की थी और मैं जागी तो ये मुझे हाशिम साहब ने बताया ये ख्वाब की ये उनका मैसेज आया। तो मैंने कहा बच्चे तुम्हें तो अल्लाह ने वहीं कबूलियत की खुशखबरी दे दी है। इस ख्वाब के बाद ताले की मैं एक पुरानी ख्वाब देख रही थी, उसका आखिरी हिस्सा ये था कि जैसे कि मैं हज़ूर सल्लल्लाहु अलैहि वसल्लम का बेटा हूँ, हज़ूर सल्लल्लाहु अलैहि वसल्लम मेरे वालिद हैं, इस तरह का लिखा हुआ उसने। तो देखें इनकी ख्वाब इनको पता ही नहीं है और मैंने बहुत दफ़ा ख्वाब उसकी पढ़ी थी मगर मेरी तवज्जो ही नहीं गई इस आखिरी लाइन की तरफ कि हज़ूर सल्लल्लाहु अलैहि वसल्लम मेरे वालिद हैं। तो अब कल मैंने जब उसके पुराने मैसेजेस खोल के पढ़ी थी तो ये ख्वाब का आखिरी मुझे लाइन थी, तो मैंने कहा चले उस ख्वाब की वो भी हो गया, मतलब कंफर्म अल्लाह ही जानता है वैसे, लेकिन बज़ाहिर तो वो भी कंफर्म हो गई उनकी ख्वाब भी।
You know, in the end, I can't help but to reiterate the words of the Holy Prophet ﷺ when his son Ibrahim passed away. إن العين تدمع وإن القلب يخشع ولا نقول إلا ما يرضي ربنا وإنا على فراقك يا طالع لمحزونون. Verily, our eyes are full of tears and our heart grieves, but we say only what our Lord is pleased with, and indeed we grieve on your separation.
So sometimes the spirit goes into a slumber and sometimes it dies. And Shahadat has a quality that it wakes up the slumbering spirits or dead spirits if it gives them life. And I have a personal experience of that because it happened to me. And I'm sure that Shahadat of Sayyid Taleh Ahmad is going to be a source of life for so many thirsty spirits, slumbering spirits and dead spirits. In general for all in Jamaat, but especially for the spirits in the family of promised Messiah alayhi salam.
वो प्यारा वजूद, वक्फ की रूह को समझने वाला और इस अहद को हकीकी रंग में निभाने वाला था जो उसने किया था। मुझे हैरत होती थी उसे देखकर, और अब तक होती है कि किस तरह इस दुनियावी माहौल में पलने वाले बच्चे ने अपने वक्फ को समझा और फिर उसे निभाया, और ऐसा निभाया कि इसके मयार को इंतहा तक पहुंचा दिया, और शहीद होकर बता गया कि मैं खिलाफत का हकीकी मददगार बना हूँ। बस वाकई ज़िंदगी के लिए भी वो एक नमूना था, और ख़ानदान हज़रत मसीह मौऊद अलैहिस्सलाम का फ़र्द होने की हैसियत से ख़ानदान के अफराद के लिए भी वो वफ़ा और इखलास का एक नमूना कायम कर गया। ए प्यारे ताले, मैं गवाही देता हूँ कि यकीनन तुमने अपने वक्फ और अहद के आला तरीन मयारों को हासिल कर लिया। अल्लाह ताला ऐसे वफ़ाशार, खिलाफत से इखलास और वफ़ा का ताल्लुक़ रखने वाले और दीन को दुनिया पर मुक़द्दम रखने वाले जमात को अता फ़रमाता रहे।